Welcome to the Silicon Slope Show, a beautiful April morning. We are excited to be here. We are sad that Clint Batts is not here. He is indisposed with a small sickness, but I'm sure he'll be back. Today's show is brought to you by Black Desert Resort. Black Desert is committed to one thing above all, fostering an endlessly fun and fascinating resort community without any pretense that puts the remarkable within reach. Home to a PGA FedEx Cup and LPGA event, Black Desert offers world-class golf, hospitality, dining, shopping, and recreating in a stunning 600-acre canvas in the heart of Greater Zion in southern Utah. More info at blackdesertevents.com. Have you ever been to Black Desert?
You know, I was invited a week and a half ago, and my son had a baseball tournament, so I had to find someone to fill my spot. But
in the future, you should
I will be
fill
back.
that spot.
Yeah.
Today, we're joined by Dan Nelson, who is the CEO of GBS Benefits. How are you, Dan?
Good. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thank you for joining. How was the weekend? How was spring break?
It was awesome. Beautiful weather. I went with the rest of Utah down to St. George, and yeah, we had a great time. It was great weather. Spent a little bit of time in the ER with the daughter that broke her arm.
That's not good.
And yeah.
But maybe we'll talk about that in relation to your role as the CEO of GBS Benefits and having a broad knowledge of the healthcare system and how that all works.
Yeah.
Let's set the table here for those that don't know. What does GBS Benefits do, and how long have you been with the company?
I'm going on my fourth year in the company. GBS, we are part of the Levitt Group. GBS is the employee benefits arm of the Levitt Group. Levitt Group nationally is one of the top 10 insurance consultants. We provide insurance consulting on property and casualty, known as P&C, and then employee and group benefits. And I'm the CEO of the group benefits arm of the business.
Very cool. So this touches most people, and it touches most of our listeners here. You guys provide a lot of the benefits for a lot of companies up and down Silicon Slopes. Is that correct?
We do all over, not only the state, but the Intermountain West. We're one of the largest in the Intermountain West, and expanding nationally into the Levitt Group's footprint.
Very cool. So we've all, taken our first job or moved jobs, and we sit down with somebody from HR or whatever they're called these days and get orientated with the company, including benefits. And those might include like vision and dental and health. This is all areas that you guys encompass. And it's a lot of work because it's kind of a moving target. Everyone's got an opinion about healthcare, especially when they're involved in receiving that. How does it work for you guys to kind of be the middleman, the Switzerland, if you will, between the behemoths and ultimately the end customer that wants to get rid of the sniffles or fix their arm?
Yeah, I appreciate the way you pose that because that's exactly what we do. We're a consultant in the middle. We are very much on the side of our client, which is the employer. We work for the employer and the employee, and we essentially help them shop this very, very complex marketplace of provider networks, which are your hospitals and your doctors, your dentists, et cetera, and your payers or your carriers, which are the typical insurance companies. They're the names of the companies that are on the cards in your wallet or on your app that you check in with at the front desk of the doctor's office. And we help you navigate that. We help you price out those plans. We try to create the most competitive situation so that people are bidding for your business. Those companies are bidding for your business, so that you can offer the best employee experience for the lowest possible cost.
Yeah. We use GBS, and when we were kind of picking our plans, we had it's cast up on the screen, and we were going through all sorts of options. And I use this example because it happened. I happened to be touring a startup with a couple hundred employees. The oldest one looked to be maybe 50, but they were all really healthy, and you could tell like health and wellness was a big part of it. And then I also had spent an hour and a half at a truck stop doing some minor repairs on a tire, and I was watching the truckers, and this is a little mean, but come in and use the truck stop, and I'm like, whoever's got to insure these fellas has a lot more to worry about than a bunch of young folks, right? Because they did not look and act overly healthy, right? They were eating a lot of processed foods and sugars and sitting around a lot, whereas the startup was a lot more healthy and active. But this would be something that you and your company would factor in, I would assume, right? Like number of employees and health of the employees and age and all of that. It's pretty complex.
It is complex, and we have a lot of people on staff to help with that. We have, insurance companies have their own actuaries and data scientists to help do exactly what you said, and that's to evaluate their risk in that population that they are looking to provide coverage for. We have our own actuaries on staff to act as a check and balance, because all you have is data, right? And if you look at that claims history, you hear those financial disclaimers that past performance is no prediction of the future. Well, in healthcare, that's really all you have. Is you've got the age of your population, and you've got their claims history on the population, and we do a lot of work on our side to make sure that those insurance companies are using that data correctly, and not overpricing things, not treating a one-time claim as an ongoing claim, for example, and making sure that doesn't get priced into your plan.
Yeah. So there's a lot of math and a lot of algorithms, but then there is kind of some psychology to it, right? Of if you were going to underwrite or provide insurance to a skydiving troupe versus a group that just works
We'd
on
probably
computers.
pass on that one.
Yeah. The costs are going to go up and down, and then you've got the carriers, correct? Like these are the logos that show up a lot as sponsors of big events and commercials, particularly for golf or things like that, like United Healthcare. And then you've got, the end consumer that has a sick kid, and they just want a quick and seamless way to know how much this is going to cost. And I'd like to talk a little bit about like the not knowing, like, I wonder how much this doctor appointment's going to cost. And perhaps you could use examples, right? Like with your daughter, unfortunately breaking her arm. It's a little bit of guessing when you go into the ER, I would assume.
Well, absolutely. I mean, in the case of my daughter, it was 8:00 at night. There's one ER room in all of St. George, and so that's a perfect example of a non-shoppable event, right? Yeah. I'm not going to shop that. I'm not going to ask questions as to how much the Tylenol is going to cost that they're offering to help her with her pain. And about 30% of our healthcare costs fall into that non-shoppable, if you're in a car accident or some kind of a crisis. But 70% of everything we consume in healthcare is shoppable, right? We do have time. We can price compare. The problem is the industry itself has made it very, very difficult to do that. It's an opaque process. And we tend to apply, as consumers, we tend to apply that 30% non-shoppable experience to the rest of everything we do in healthcare. So if we have knee pain, we don't call in and say, how much will it cost to have this looked at? How much will the MRI cost? And you add to that a great number of our providers, meaning the doctor's office, the primary care, are part of a health system. I spent 11 years, including a church assignment, but 9 years in Europe with family. And primary care in Europe is interesting because your general practitioner doctor, basically think of about it as a funnel, right? He stands or she stands at the point of that funnel, and her job, because it's a national health system, right? And the national health system, it's free healthcare.
Yeah.
Their job is to protect everything above that funnel, all the specialists, all the expensive lab work, all of that, to protect you from that. And so it's very, very difficult in Europe to get past the primary care physician. In the U.S., it's just the opposite. In the U.S., that primary care physician is really the referring physician. And if they're part of a hospital system, that whole hospital system views you and me as a product, right? And they don't make money unless they can get us into that system. And so I'll use the example of a knee pain, right? I'm a 50-year-old, I have knee pain, I go to my primary care physician. My primary care physician spends maybe 10 minutes with me and says, I need to get an image. Gives me a script and points down the hall and says that there's an imaging center down the hall. Well, I never stop and think, how much is that image going to cost me? I walk down the hall, they work me right in within 24 hours, if not sooner. I get my MRI. The MRI goes back to the doctor. The doctor says, you're a candidate for a knee replacement, and then refers me to an orthopede in their health system. I go to see the orthopede. The orthopede says, it's your lucky day. I just had a cancellation. I can work you in the next 2 weeks for a knee replacement. I get my knee replacement. As soon as I'm done there, they give me a referral to a physical therapist. It's also in the same healthcare system. I spend time with the physical therapist. Well, fast forward 6 months down the path. I still have knee pain. My recovery's been slow. And I'm sitting on the couch thinking, man, I'm 60 to 70 pounds overweight. Nobody talked to me about that.
Yeah.
And so what do? I go back to my doctor and I say, the same doctor that I went to the first time, and say, hey, could my weight be contributing to this knee pain? And the doctor says, you know what? You may be a candidate for bariatric surgery, and refers me down the hall to another. You see how that,
Yeah.
and so, these healthcare systems that we have are great. They're, and when I was a kid, our hospitals were there as kind of the last resort, right? They were there for the big accident. They were there for the baby. They were there for some life event. Well, today, our hospitals have basically become like Tyson Corner shopping malls, where we get all of our healthcare needs taken care of. Well, any hospital system will tell you the most expensive place to get any care is at a hospital. And so, I'm a big believer in, as we help employers design their plans, to look at independent physician networks that are not tied into these systems, that aren't tied into this kind of referral income stream necessity, but then also having the access of the great hospitals. Your eyes are glazing over. I think I lost you on that one.
I'm loving this analogy because I'm just like envisioning that example. They all have the last name, or they're all related, right? Like they're vertically integrated in a monopolistic way. And I'm thinking about I had somebody come and look at our HVAC, and they started talking about plumbing and mold and a few other things. I'm like, interesting. I wonder if y'all are in cahoots.
Yeah.
And, it's not dissimilar. They're like, oh, yeah, let's, you got a lot of problems. Keep going.
Yeah. And that, going back to my Europe analogy, where the GP, as they're called there, the general practitioner, is there to kind of protect the system from spending more money on your healthcare need. The U.S. system's just the opposite of that.
Yeah.
The primary care physician is really the gateway to the entire system. And then you combine that with a primary care shortage that we have in this country. They're overworked. Their patient load is just excessive. When's the last time you spent 45 minutes with your primary care physician?
No, it's always like 17 minutes max.
Yeah, max. And usually, so you're using one of the highest cost, highest compensated individuals in the healthcare system to essentially write you a script to go get lab work or to go get imaging. And that lab work and imaging then opens up the entire kind of next step. And so we got to be smart about it. I've thought a lot about your listening audience here and thinking, okay, the last thing I want to do is be one of the million voices out there that say the healthcare system's broken. I mean, everyone says that ad nauseum. It's annoying to hear even people in the industry say it. So what's the solution?
Yeah.
To me, the solution is to be really, really smart about it and to say, okay, I know that I'm a product, a high dollar product to the healthcare system. The healthcare system is not incentivized around my wellness. They use terms like wellness all the time, but they're not incentivized. No doctor is paid on you being healthy and you being well. The cash register only rings if we're sick.
Yeah.
It's not health care, it's sick care. And so, if I'm in my 20s and 30s and 40s, I can get out ahead of that and say, all right, I don't want to spend my 50s and 60s and 70s being that product in that system, trying to navigate those difficult waters. I can make lifestyle decisions now.
Yeah.
To curtail that and avoid that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was lucky enough to have a couple of aunts who were nurses, kind of using your example of like they were protecting the costs going up the funnel. And it was, really lucky that they'd answer the phone and be helpful. And sometimes we'd go over to their house and they'd look at us, for, snotty noses or whatever it is, even, scrapes and burns and things. And they would oftentimes give practical and free advice and say, you do not need to go anywhere else, right? Like you're good with ibuprofen or Tylenol, or just go to this doctor and get a script. Probably saved us a ton of money, growing up.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that, to your example of, you're going to be in a vortex there of a lot of service providers and then a lot of bills in the mail.
No question. And part of this is just our U.S., we have this kind of instant, got to have things now mentality in the U.S. We like the same, we like the same service in our healthcare, and we like the same options in healthcare as we have, on the cereal aisle.
Yeah.
In the grocery store. I was just reading that the FDA manages 16,000 drugs, 16,000 FDA approved drugs. 1 in 4 of those drugs are deemed to be or measured to be actually helpful. And so if you think about that, we tend to like that magic pill, right? Idea that if my blood pressure is going the wrong way, if my cholesterol is going the wrong way, and I absolutely believe, by the way, in medicine, in Western medicine, but I also believe that we overly depend on it, and there are a lot of things that our medical system is not incentivized to help us do, to look at other opportunities or other options, whether that's a supplement path, whether that's a lifestyle path. We've, and the stats don't lie. If you look at the average retiree in our country, they've got 4 to 5 times more pill bottles in their bathroom than any other country. Any other westernized country.
Yeah.
And so we like pills, and the pills cost money.
Yeah.
It's 30 per 20 approach, and now that you have gene therapies coming on, could be as high as 30% of our overall medical costs are coming just from medicines.
Yeah. And maybe 1 out of 4 is additive and helpful.
Maybe.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, it sounds like a lot of things in life. There's maybe follow the money a little bit, which is unfortunate, right? Because you've referred to us, you and me, and everybody else as products, and it's not hard to see why that is. But when you're sick or you need medical attention, you don't want to feel like a product. For GBS, you guys, again, being the middleman in Switzerland, I feel like, having done this hundreds, if not thousands of times, there have been some really cool ideas in and around healthcare. And then they kind of like putter out. They either don't work or possibly get acquired by a big dog, and then you never hear about them again, including, right, like being able to shop for ingrown toenail or tennis elbow or something like that with like and let's be generous and give it a ballpark. This will be $150 to $175, right? Like Nike.com doesn't do that, right? Like your shoe is going to be $88. But it seems like it's not a bridge too far to be able to price that 60 to 70% of choice into your healthcare costs. Is that a dream, or is that feasible, you think?
It's very feasible, and there's some great companies that are working on, and some of our carriers, some of the bigger carriers are working on tools like that. Your point, what you're talking about in general, is price transparency.
Yeah.
We should be able to shop for most of our medical needs the same way we shop for shoes on Amazon. Why is it that we can't shop for if I need blood work done, or if I need imaging done? Why isn't there a simple app that I can go to, like Amazon or one of the other shopping products, and look at that? Well, there are companies, and I don't want to necessarily run a commercial for all these different companies, but we at GBS, we actually brought to the market, to the Utah market, some of these transparent tools, and it's crazy. If you look at the differences in price. I mean, you look at an MRI, it's the same magnet, it's the same machine. You will see a 10x difference between one imaging center that's probably in a hospital and one that's just out in an independent standalone imaging center. But going back to my scenario, if you're going to a doctor that's part of that hospital system, you are likely going to get, and it's convenient, right? And the problem is our insurance is covering probably 80% of the cost, and that's another one of the challenges and the problems, where I only pay a fraction of the cost. I'm not as price sensitive. Think about it in terms of anything. Tires on your car. If you only paid 10% or 15% of tires on your car, would you be overall concerned about, or as concerned with the final price on the car? Think about, I raised the topic of flight tickets, right?
Yeah.
Just think about buying a flight where you didn't know the cost before you bought the flight. And in medicine, or in healthcare, we get what's called this EOB, explanation of benefits, in the mail, probably a week to 2 weeks. In the case of my daughter, I'm expecting it in the next week to see what that final cost was for that excellent care, by the way. She had excellent care in that hospital. But I don't know. I have no idea what that cost me.
Yeah.
Imagine taking a flight and coming home a week later, getting a bill in the mail from Delta saying that cost you $4,000.
Yep.
There's just nothing we don't buy anything like this.
No.
Like we buy in healthcare. And in answer to your question, there are some really cool companies and some cool technologies that are developing that kind of decision support and algorithm. And it's not just cost, right? It's quality. We don't want, in healthcare, none of us want the lowest cost care. We want the best outcome care for the best possible price. And so cost is one of the elements of that. And a number of our clients that we provide, that we help with benefits here and nationally, utilize some of those tools.
Interesting. Do you think, I know you hate it, but like I've been hearing that the healthcare system's broken for a long time, but do you think it can be unraveled to a certain point where it is easier, cheaper, like the service providers, whether they're independent or in network, can still make decent money, but that it can kind of swing back where the prices of insurance are not going up, the prices of a broken finger are not going up, the prices of getting your sniffles taken care of are not going up. Do you think it can be turned back, or is it?
To be honest with you, it's a little overwhelming to me. I sit on the One Utah Health Collaborative that Governor Cox has put together, and you've got the best minds in the industry that are talking about this and meeting about this and trying to set goals and saying, okay, in 15 years, we want to make sure that our initial goal was to make sure that our cost of healthcare never outstepped or stepped ahead of GDP in general as a state. What a great goal!
Yeah,
it's not done by the way, historically, but it's complicated, and the more I think about it, the more I come to the conclusion that yes, there are some things structurally that we can do, but you just look at this state. In the state of Utah, we've got basically two major hospital systems in Utah. They've gobbled up a lot of the primary care in Utah. So our independent primary care are getting harder and harder. And if there's a tip that I would give to any of our listeners, is to get in with an independent primary care now, because 20% of them are going to retire in the next 5 years. And our medical schools are not producing more. And so primary care is even going to get more challenging. And so, get in with an independent primary care that is focused on you, that's focused on your wellness. And then listen to your doctor. And if your doctor is telling you need to move more, move more. If they're telling you need to exercise more, exercise more. To me, it's not very, I don't see any silver bullet changes coming down the path outside of things that will disrupt healthcare at an individual level. And so I'm talking, there's two levels. There's population health level and there's individual level. Well, most of what we see going on societally, you just look at COVID and the response to COVID and so forth. That was all kind of population health.
Yeah.
I want individual health. I don't want some algorithm to spit out that, hey, the data says that I should be doing this or should be doing this. No, I want a consultant doctor that's telling me, in your case, Dan, you should be doing this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And then aggressively go after that. I think we're moving into and then medicine, we know in the Western United States is not integrated, right? There are countries in Europe, there are countries in Asia that take a much more integrated approach to medicine than we do. We're very kind of FDA, biologic, pharmaceutical, drug driven in our approach, and I think the one thing that global pandemic taught us is that we need to be more thoughtful and we need to be more integrated. And I have friends even in the healthcare system, right? Doctors that are part of these systems that do a lot of things that are, not produced by big pharma.
Yeah. Which is a lot better to take care of it in a preventative way. Just like, your car, when it blows up, you have a lot of regret and remorse that you didn't take it to the mechanic when the lights were flashing.
Well, late care is two things. Late care is more expensive and it's more acute, right? That's why that annual wellness visit, it's not everything that we should be doing, but boy, we ought to be absolutely not missing, our annual dermatological check, our annual blood work. You shouldn't miss that. Now, I could argue, Peter Attia, in his best-selling book, Outlived, challenges that whole paradigm and says that we ought to be starting not in our 40s and 50s, but we ought to be starting in our 20s and 30s to get out ahead of that curve. And I really subscribe to that thinking. But man, annual wellness checks
Yeah.
are absolutely critical. But what's an annual wellness check focused on? It's focused on detection.
Yeah.
It's not focused on prevention, right? You're not going to have this long sit down, knee to knee, eye to eye discussion with your doctor on prevention. You need to figure out, okay, how do I fill that need? If the healthcare system's not filling my preventative need, then how am I going to fill that?
Yeah.
And talk to your employers about it, because there's a lot of options. You know, we bring a smorgasbord of options, of wellness of wellness tools, of wellness programs that they can look at implementing. And, you know, we help them kind of pick and choose what they're going to get the best value out of. But there's a lot of options out there.
Yeah. You raised some really interesting points. I remember going to the doctor as a kid, you know, once a year. And then, you know, usually parents were there, but then once you got driver's license, you had to go to get a physical for football or baseball or something. But they'd sit there and talk to you, look you in the eye, and say, "I don't want to see you again for a year," or whatever it is. But then they'd sit there and tell you, like, you know, make sure you stretch, or they would give like actual consultation, and it wasn't like you're on an assembly line to get you out of there. And I just have noticed the older I've gotten, it's like, what? Okay, gotcha. Here's this. See you later. Bye. Get out. It was a lot more civil, it seemed.
And that's good if you're then taking it to the next level and saying, okay, I'm gonna, you know, it does take some rigor and some kind of deliberate effort to essentially say, okay, what am I, if I've got cardiovascular disease in my family, and if the males in my family have generally had heart attacks between 50 and 60, how am I going to bend that curve?
Yeah.
In my case. And when am I going to start?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to start at 45? You know, I think that you know, authors and doctors like Atia and others have kind of helped us think about that and helped me think about that. And I'm over 50, right? So I'm late.
Yeah.
To be, but not too late.
Yeah.
It's never too late to start to say, you know what, I don't want to spend. He introduces this concept in the book called rather than lifespan. Lifespan is very difficult to change,
Mm-hmm.
but he focuses on health span, and that is my health span. How can I make my last 10 years healthier if I can't change my expiration date?
Yeah.
Right. In the U.S., the average actually our life expectancy for the first time in 40 years is going the other way in this country.
Yeah.
Which is another measure, by the way, of the effectiveness of our healthcare. We spend per capita over $13,000 per person per year on healthcare. Our next closest Western country, first world country, spends $6,200 a year.
Mm.
And our longevity, our lifespan is going the wrong direction.
Yeah. That's a bad indicator, right?
It's a bad indicator, and it says, let's not forget that I don't want to make this political, but what I would say is, and we've got great doctors, we've got great institutions, great medical institutions in this state that give us access, unbelievable access to acute level care that a lot of people in the country don't have. But I would say, let's not forget, when everyone says, kind of trust the science, trust the science, trust the science, doctors used to prescribe smoking.
Yeah.
For anxiety.
Mercury.
You look at the opioid crisis that our country is in right now.
Yeah.
That started through what I would say were misaligned incentives.
Yeah.
Right? There are a lot of companies and billions of dollars of lawsuits, by the way, that have come, and a lot of money has been made off of what has now turned into a use epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
in our country. And so you look at, you don't have to look far back in our history to say, okay, we've got a pharmaceutical industry that is first and foremost commercially driven. They're not cure driven. They're commercially driven. And I have to recognize that as a consumer. My parents' generation don't recognize that. They really believe that these pills were designed with these altruistic motives to help them. No, they were designed to make money off them. And they have to show efficacy, right? They have to show some help along the way. And so anyway, I just think for your audience and for this audience, we have to be smart, and we have to be integrated in our thinking. And we can't, when our parents, our parents, if they saw a white coat and a stethoscope around your neck, man, it was like the highest authority that you could kind of appeal to in society. And they have their place, but I need to be responsible for my health. Yeah. And I need to ensure that my health span is what I want. I need to be deliberate about it. If I'm going out to, if I think I'm eating healthy, but I've got more special sauce on my sushi than I have on my Big Mac, it's probably not healthy, right? And so I need to be smart.
That special sauce is really yummy, though.
It keeps us coming back.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was with my dad, who's in his early 70s, and he's in better shape than me. He has a little farm, and he's constantly working and moving his muscles and getting good cardio. And then there's an interesting story in the Wall Street Journal, still might be up, of like your actual like physical fitness age, right? Like you could be 48 and you've got the heart and the respiratory and the cardio of a 68-year-old because all you do is play video games, and vice versa. But one of the lines I remember was, there's a big difference from going from bad to good. There's marginal from going from like good to great. Like you're already in pretty good shape and you make a few tweaks, but just going from bad to good, that's where the biggest difference is in health, lifestyle, and getting back to what human beings probably should be, which is a little healthier than what we currently are, I think.
Yeah. It comes down to really 5 basics. And I know it's they're so basic, it's almost annoying to hear them mentioned, but it's food, right? It's what we eat. We are what we eat. And you mentioned processed foods, you mentioned, truck stop food, et cetera. That has consequences, right? So it's food, it's movement, right? We are designed to move.
Yeah.
And you bring up the gaming culture or whatever, man, we've got to be moving. It's social engagement. That's absolutely critical.
Yeah, that was in there too. Yeah.
If we're spending our time on this, I missed number 2, by the way. Number 2 is sleep.
Yeah.
Sleep is absolutely critical. So if I'm not a good sleeper and I'm in my 30s, that should be in everyone's mind a big indicator that there is not only high healthcare costs, but there are acute healthcare needs in my future.
Yeah.
And so I've got to get aggressive about that. I've got to say, okay, I need to look at how to address my sleep issue. What are the underlying causes of that? So, it's the basics.
Yep, it really is. One question on the business side of GBS. There will always be emails and commercials and flyers of open enrollment, right? It sounds like, as a layman on this side, it's like, all right, everyone's going to get their swords out, polish them up, and get their pistols out and polish them up, put on the best presentation ever. For you guys on the business side of that, you've got to provide good customer service, good customer support, be transparent, be as additive as possible. But what's that like on the business side for these open enrollment weeks or days? I don't even know how long they are, but it seems like everyone pushes their chips in the middle.
Well, times the pressure that you feel in one company by 3,000, and that's when you realize what we deal with just in the state of Utah in open enrollment. Right? You're dealing with thousands and thousands of where enrollment opens up, where you can relook at your selections that you made as an employee and lock them in for another year. It's one of the ways our system works. Don't ask me why it's not more adaptable and flexible than that, other than the fact that insurance carriers need to, at some point, kind of lock in their math, their algorithms, and know what kind of risk they're taking, and backing. But it's also a time that I think we should be looking at. Some of the questions that I hope I'm raising to the audience. I think that provides kind of a natural renewal cycle where I can be kind of looking and thinking about, all right, how does this trend over time?
Yeah.
How am I trending over time? What things can I do in my family to improve it? And one thing we've not talked about is depending on the size of your company. So if you have hundreds of employees, companies can make the choice to become what the industry calls self-insured, where rather than bring in an outside insurance carrier like a Regents or a Select Health or a United to cover their risk, they decide, we're going to cover that risk ourselves. And they put some what's called caps on it, right? They'll say, we'll cover that risk up to X million of dollars, but anything over that, we'll put an extra insurance policy in place over the top to handle that, because none of our P&Ls have unlimited ability to fund if the crap really hits the fan.
Yeah.
But so going back to the 2 questions ago about whether I'm optimistic and hopeful about the future, our self-insured employers can really be edgy and can really be quite open-minded and thoughtful about what they want to cover and what they don't want to cover. And we're having a number of those discussions right now. We've got an FDA in this country that if you were cynical, you might say that the FDA is influenced by big pharma and by the big interest groups in medicine as to why some things are approved in Germany, for example, but not approved in the U.S.
Yeah.
Well, some of our self-insured employers say, you know what, we want our employees to have the best care, period. And so they are open to things like medical tourism, where I can go and get disc replacement surgery done in Germany, for example, or I can go to India and have some stem cell treatments done in India for my MS that I can't have done here. And that to me is pretty exciting to think about as we consult with these companies and say, okay, there are significant options, and the options are not just what's available up and down the Wasatch Front. It's really what's available globally for you, and here are the risks, here are the potential upsides and rewards. I mean, our FDA also provides a lot of protections and a lot of safety precautionary type efforts for the population. But the FDA is not the only game in town when it comes to some of these treatments, and a lot of people are recognizing this, especially companies. That doesn't apply to the Medicare and the Medicaid users. They usually are more stuck in a local providing healthcare need. But if companies have the ability to look at this, it may not. You look at an MS case, for example, and stem cell therapy. Well, if I've got MS, I'm going to cost that healthcare plan, millions of dollars in just medications.
Yeah.
You look at diabetes, right? Diabetes is going to cost a healthcare plan millions of dollars to manage over say a 10 to 15 year period. But if I can look at some of these therapies outside and it costs me, say, $50,000 to access one of those treatments, what's just as a business decision?
Yeah.
Is it worth rolling the dice, or is it worth looking into some of these? And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, I would agree. I like those ideas there. AI is talked about theoretically by a lot of folks that it doesn't impact them or their business yet, but I feel like it might impact insurance and benefits, and y'all has AI played into anything you guys have thought about in the past, or more in particular in the future?
Yeah, it's coming. It's certainly is being applied. Layers of AI are being applied to some of the mathematical areas that I talked about. How to price risk in the business. I may be different than other people, but I can't wait. I cannot wait until I don't have to call and make an appointment 4 weeks out, remember that I had that appointment, not have any meeting conflict with that appointment, then arrive on time for that appointment, only to wait 35 minutes in the waiting room for that appointment to see a physician for 10 minutes. I think that is the most inefficient use of time. And if I can answer that through some AI bot that has best practice or whatever, I get pretty excited about that.
Yeah, for sure. But all, I keep just thinking of the end consumer and like, a busy mom with 4 kids or a busy executive, and just making their life easier. It's probably just good for everyone.
Yeah.
A lot better.
Yeah, it's coming. And I talked a little bit about the healthcare shortage. I've had meetings with some of the largest healthcare systems in this state. And honestly, their only solution to the healthcare shortage that's coming, meaning 20% of all healthcare professionals are retiring. It's the baby boomer generation, right? They're retiring in the next 5 years. You don't have, and this is not a Utah problem, right? This is a national problem. Yeah. You don't have the graduates and the students coming out of medical schools to fill that need. And at the primary care level, they're already completely overburdened and overworked. So how do you solve that? Yeah. To me, that is a perfect AI solution and a perfect technology solution. And they're in the hospital systems know it, they see it, and they're investing in it.
Oh yeah, I think that's amazing because it's an insult to injury, right? Like the baby boomers are going to need more doctors, but all their friends and colleagues are retiring as well, right? They want to go to the beach, and you're going to be left with a shortage. Really interesting. Well, these insights.
That's an interesting point you bring up there, because the baby boomers, their actual, but their medical requirements are going to go up by a factor of 3 in that same time period. 3 times more medical need at the time when the system has contracted 20% down. And look at it from yours and my perspective, right? And if we have children, from our children's perspective, healthcare is not going to be the same. No. It's not going to be the same. We're not going to have the same access. And I think that I'm a big believer in the free market, and I'm excited about some of the technologies and some of the VC money that's going after this problem. Yeah. And I think that there's going to be some pretty innovative solutions. Yeah,
there's going to need to be, right? Like in these futuristic sci-fi movies, the doctors are often robots or androids, and if the numbers don't add up on the human side, there is going to have to be some sort of innovative inventions to keep everyone healthy. Wonderful insights. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much, Dan. Appreciate your time, and it sounds like you got your work cut out for you for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, this problem will outlive me.
Yeah.
I'm certain. Speaking of outlive.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Tomorrow, our guest is Derek Brown, who is running for Attorney General. Thank you so much, Dan.
Thanks.